I'm joined now by Derek Walker, who is Future Generations Commissioner for Wales, a very interesting, important new role created a few years ago. And I hope we can explore with you, Derek, sort of why the role was created, how you do it, what you do, and perhaps this bigger question, which many countries are grappling with, of how do you represent the interests of future generations in today's decision making, particularly in conditions of great stress and pressure and fiscal restriction. Perhaps we might then start with the why was this created?
This was part of Wales's journey to deliver on the Sustainable Development Goals for the UN. So this was created, this position, this legislation, the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, is now 10 years old. It will actually be 10 years old in April. And this was the latest iteration of Wales in a devolved context in the UK, thinking about how we can act for the long term and deliver an agenda, a programme of government in Wales at the government level and at lower public bodies in health and local authorities, which was sustainable. So the way we've done that is by putting in place this Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. And we think we're the only country in the world to have legislated for the SDGs. And what that does is require our public bodies, Welsh Government, as I say, health boards, councils, to put in place long-term plans, so raise their horizons, look to the long term, and understand how they are going to act to do the right thing for generations yet to come.
And I think it's probably worth explaining Wales is a nation within the United Kingdom, but which has autonomy on most domestic policies, not on foreign policy. And so there's a lot of different sort of areas of government which therefore you have a role on. So tell us what happens if you see government about to do something which you think might be damaging for future generations.
Well, I guess that's an interesting part of the approach in Wales, and perhaps not something that might be replicated in other countries. So my role is as an independent commissioner. So I'm got a budget from the Welsh Government, but I'm independent of government, which is a key part of this. So I'm there to advise government and the other public sector organisations on what they do. I'm there to monitor their progress, but I'm also there to call it out and review their progress, to criticise it potentially if I'm not satisfied with the progress they make. So I'm there as a conscience for future generations, which is a fairly brave thing to do, isn't it, for a government to fund someone to have an independent position to potentially criticise them. And I'm there, largely in a constructive role, because this, as you said at the beginning, Geoff, is a challenging agenda. How do you manage to meet the needs of people today whilst also focusing on the long term and making sure we do the right thing for our children and our grandchildren? So it's really challenging. There are all sorts of issues in the way in terms of course, elections or, budget cycles or perhaps a pressure from people to focus on the now rather than on the future. So we've got to find solutions to that. And my job is to, as I see it, not just to call things out, to be working alongside our public sector organisations to find those solutions for the long term and the short term. And largely this is about a mindset. If you don't think 25 years ahead, 50 years ahead when you're taking decisions, then you're never going to find the solutions that meet the needs of today and of tomorrow. But if you do have that framework of decision making, you're more likely to take decisions that are right for the long term, that are not sticking plaster solutions, and that meet both objectives of the now and the tomorrow.
And it is 25, 50 years. It's not 200 years into the future you're looking. So in fact, it's often people who are already born today, but maybe for good reason, they may live to 80 or 90 or 100 or more. Is that right?
Well, that's right. We haven't got a specific time scale unless you count, some of our indicators which measure our success might be 2030, 2040, 2050. But public bodies take a different horizon. Sometimes, maybe 2050, it may be 2100, it might be different timelines. The important thing is that they're thinking long term, beyond the next year, beyond the next 3 years, beyond the next 10 years, and trying to make sure that they do the right thing for the long term. The point I would like to raise, Geoff, in relation to what you were talking about, young people, on the planet today often get this in a way that people of my generation don't always get it, because they've got a longer time on this planet. They want to make sure things are done right for the rest of their lifetime. But it isn't just a young person's agenda, this. We all want a better tomorrow. We all want things to be right for our children and our grandchildren, and we've all got stake in the future. So involving people in these decisions is a critical part of our approach.
Now, all of us in a way live in the present. We're worried about paying the bills, about, something horrible things going wrong next year, maybe another war or a financial crash. What have you found works best in helping people not ignore the present, because obviously that matters, but keep it in balance with a 20, 40, 60-year time horizon?
Well, what I find works is a bit that I've just talked about. This is about not ignoring the needs of people today, but this is about doing the today and the tomorrow at the same time. So trying to find those solutions that are win-wins for, responding to the very needs of people today and the needs of people tomorrow. There will be other questions raised about the challenges of this. So, we don't know, we haven't got a crystal ball about what's going to happen. So talking about the data, how we can project into the future, how often this data can be very reliable about what we can expect if we don't act, can be another way of anchoring this, I guess, in a science or in data, or in an evidence-based way, to understand, what we can do, and to support people, to look at those issues and find ways in order to meet the needs of today and tomorrow. So there are lots of challenges around this. Short-term budgets, as I said, elections, all of these things are often put in my way to suggest reasons why you can't do this. But the truth is, we have no choice. We are running out of time to deal with nature loss, the climate emergency, some of the long-term health trends that are facing Wales and the rest of the world. So we have to find ways through the barriers and obstacles that are in our way to do the right thing for the long term and the short term. So it's very much a way of thinking.
And so what would your recommendations be for the other 194 countries around the world? You're only the second Future Generations Commissioner in Wales, but there is now one in the European Union. There are futures committees in parliaments. There's the beginnings of a kind of institutional sort of landscape around all of this. In the light of your own experience, what would your recommendations be for the rest of the world, I guess?
Well, it's great that, isn't it, that countries, multinational institutions around the world are also looking at this. We had the UN Summit of the Future back in September, a commitment to a special envoy for future generations. This is all really important. What Wales offers, and I would encourage people to look at our model, and I'm really happy to talk to people, what we offer is 10 years of experience of doing it. And people often want that, how does this work in practice? How, as a politician, does it meet the needs of my constituents today and tomorrow? And what are the lessons, good and bad, that you can share? So that, look at the Welsh model, because we're one of the few places that has that long-term experience. But having said that, the other bit I would say is, there's not a one-size-fits-all model here. There are different approaches that work in different contexts. So it's understanding, the context in which you might be working and what's likely to be more effective. So just because we've got an independent commissioner, if that's a roadblock to doing this in your country or in your region, then that's not something that needs to be part of it. It's finding something that works in the context of which, in the country that you're working. And as you say, there are different models emerging around the world about how you do this stuff, and different aspects of these models will be relevant for different countries.
And what's kind of important, or many things important about the Welsh experience, is it is in law, it's embodied in law,
Yes.
and then it's embodied in an institution So it's harder to ignore, I guess, than it would be if it was just something which was a nice to have, which might be thought about every now and again.
This is it. The law is super important in the Welsh context because it cannot be ignored. And I breathe life into that law, by monitoring and advising and bringing it to the attention of those who are responsible for delivering it. So they can't get away with, not doing very much, or, pretending to do something and not delivering, because I'm there to watch what they're doing, and I will advise them and call it out if they're not doing it. So that's an important aspect of our approach. One of the things I'm doing at the moment is there's 56 public bodies that come under the Act in Wales, and I'm visiting them all, sometimes mostly online, and talking to them about my views on their delivery and my advice on what more they need to do.
Fantastic. Well, let's hope in the next few years you're cloned or replicated,
Let's
or at
hope so.
least you inspire others to move in this direction in what we hope will be a great era of institutional innovation in the years ahead. Many thanks, Derek Walker.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Geoff.